Hey everybody, Matt McQueenie, Mix Minus Podcast. The Mix Minus Podcast is brought to you by Big League Pillows. Big League Pillows are customizable jersey pillows. You can find them at bigleaguepillows.com. In honor of the World Cup, which is happening right now in Russia, there have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 new jersey styles added to the mix in honor of the World Cup. You have all kinds of countries, and so you can add your number and I believe your last name to the back. Typically with the Big League Pillows, you can have the name on the front, the name on the back, and the number. But I'm not sure or 100% sure whether, I would guess that when you get these Big League Pillows, which are under the term international, that they're probably stuck with the jersey name on the front, because then what's the point of changing that if it's in honor of the World Cup? Because you got all these countries to choose from. You have USA, Mexico, Italy, Brazil, Germany, Spain, Russia, Portugal, Morocco, Argentina, Iran, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Uruguay. So you can pick all of those, as well as all kinds of styles from the other sports with colors, types of jerseys, but I would get all focused in on those World Cup pillows right now, those jersey pillows. And if you use promo code Mix Minus, I can get you free shipping. So if you go to bigleaguepillows.com, go and purchase your jersey or make the intention to purchase your jersey, and then put in that promo code, and that shipping will be free. bigleaguepillows.com. I'm trying to sit here. It's June 23rd, Saturday. Isn't it crazy that we are about 7 days away from half of this year being finished? Half of 2018 will be done at the end of June because we're 6 months in. So we only have 6 months to go. How crazy is that? Half of this year is already finished. Unreal. But I've been sitting down. I'm trying to watch the World Cup today. It looks like... Is it Germany is playing, is it Sweden? I'll tell you, I have not watched any of this. I know there's a lot of excitement about the World Cup. I can see it in my social media feeds. I can see it in my, in the people I know who are discussing it and into it. You see the ratings. You see how much it's discussed. But I'm just not that into it. I want to be into it. I want to watch it. I think part of the issue, though, is that it's in Russia. So with that timing, the games are happening in our morning and our afternoon on the East Coast time. And I couldn't imagine on the West Coast, it's even earlier. So I'm at work most of the time. And when I'm at work, I actually don't like to watch sports while I'm working. I like to watch TV. I mostly like to listen to podcasts or listen to Howard Stern, just have that in the background. It's very... It's not something that satiates me to watch sports while I'm at work. Now, if it's the playoffs, that would be a different thing. If it's the playoffs and one of my team's in it, which doesn't happen a lot. Baseball can sometimes have a day game in the playoffs when you have those early rounds with a lot of games going on. But I just don't like watching it during the day. I like watching recap shows, people talking about sports, whether on video or on audio or in audio in your ears. But I don't really like watching it. I like settling down at the end of a day, maybe after dinner, sitting down. If it's the weekend, maybe grab a drink and just watch sports then. Because you can kind of sit, you can consume it, you can break it apart, you can focus on it. And that's really where the best value of it comes from. Because when you are distracted by work or by things you're supposed to be doing in the day, it's just hard to really get into the game as much as you need to. So this is actually the first game that I'm watching this year. I don't even know where we are in the round. I don't know knockout round. I don't know first round. I don't know how many rounds there are. I don't even really know how it works. What can you... I don't... It's obviously not single elimination yet, I don't believe. But I want to be into it. But I would just wish it could be at night. So I'm going to try to watch some of this Germany-Sweden. That's the game, right? So we'll see. Sports has been tough because I'm a Mets fan. And once you get to the point where the NBA season is over, and it was over real quick this year because it was a sweep in the finals. But once you get to that point, all you have left, after I just got talking about World Cup, but all you have left is baseball. And baseball is a funny sport in that people don't care about the sport as a whole or the league as a whole. It's one of those sports where they truly just care about their team. It's very parochial. It's very regional. And there's enough games to just care about your team. There's 162 games in a season. And so focusing on other teams is almost impossible because you have a game every night or every day with your team with a day off here or there. And on those day offs, you don't really want to watch more baseball. You sort of want to catch up on those maybe shows you need to binge or chores you need to do when you don't have your team actually playing, even if they play in the day and you just, like I was saying before, I don't like watching even the day games at work. It's just something about watching. I don't know. Don't love it. But baseball is so parochial and so regional that when your team is the Mets, as mine are, who started out, like 11-1, 12-1 or something, and they looked like they were headed for a great season, a season that was going to surprise people. And here they are, what are they, 10 games behind 500 now, 10 games under 500, and it's unwatchable. I mean, they can't score. There's no excitement. They have the two great pitchers at the top, and DeGrom's been unbelievable, but he's been unbelievable in just in a deflating way. The team is just, there's no spark there. There's no excitement. It's sort of veterans who are waiting to be traded at this point. Once the season went south, and it went south quickly. I mean, for a season to pretty much be done by the end of June, or even earlier in June, if we look at when the June swoon began, and even before that into May and all that, I mean, they've just kicked you. They've taken the air out of the ball, and there's not even air in these balls. It's just not been a good situation. And what happens then is with baseball not even being a sport that you care about the whole of it, where you're paying attention to all the pennant races and who the players are. I know who they are, but I'm not dying to watch Mike Trout tonight. I'm not dying to watch the Seattle Mariners play. I'm not dying to watch Houston play. And when it gets to the playoffs, I'm into it. Best of 7. I mean, you get the games. The games are so tense and so just riven with drama that the slow aspect of baseball, that's when it really kicks in because you're biting your nails. You're really in the moment. I remember when the Mets were in it, Gus, was it 2015 now? When they were in it, I was just locked in, and they were sweeping their way through a lot of those playoffs. They were on a run unlike anything you've ever seen. And of course, then they go and get rid of Daniel Murphy. But they had a great first round against the Dodgers. They swept through the Cubs, who were the team on the rise, who would end up winning the World Series, only the next year. And they ran into the buzzsaw that was the Kansas City Royals at that point, who had been to the World Series a year before, lost in 7 to Madison Bumgarner, and the San Francisco. What the heck am I? What am I losing my name here? Oh my God, I'm losing my mind, guys. I've been cutting carbs like crazy, drinking a lot of shakes. And San Francisco Giants, of course. And so you have this thing where you're really alert, but then there's parts where you're not, and you're like, oh, maybe my brain needed some carbohydrates there. But in that series, the tremendous series, again, I watched that I was wrapped with attention there. I was watching that series. It was so good. And baseball in the World Series, when it goes 7, as it did last year, there's just nothing better than it. I mean, when those ALCS, NLCS, those World Series, when they go 7, it is so amazing. And you talk about it between the games, you do all that. But in the regular season, it just doesn't matter. And so when your team is out of it early, you just especially don't care about the rest of the league. When your team is in it, you at least might care about the rest of the league in the sense of those are the people you're competing against. So you kind of want to do your own scouting report on them, check them out, see where they might pose a threat to your team. And so you watch them almost in a scouting capacity, but you're watching them really in a regional way because you care about your team. In the NBA and the NFL, you watch the rest of the league. I mean, at least I do. You watch it caring about the outcomes of those games and caring about those games, not about anything with your team. And I do love watching my teams. I love watching the Giants. I like watching the Jets, even though the Giants are more my team. Maybe I'm a front runner. I don't know. But basketball especially, the Brooklyn Nets have just not been good. They were a little more competitive this year, showed a little more fire. We'll see how they can continue to roll here. They brought Dwight Howard in this last week, and then it looks like they're going to buy him out 6 years after they were hoping on hope that he would do the thing they needed to do, not opt in to get him to be traded to the Nets. back when they had Darren Williams. I couldn't believe, if you would think back to 2012, that Darren Williams would be bought out by the Nets at 31 years old in 2015, and Dwight Howard would be bought out by the Nets at 32 years old in 2018. It's weird how sports works. It's why there's false prophets all over the place. There are only so many great players, so many transcendent players to go around. It's just how the sport is. It's how all sports are. But with basketball, you care about all the teams, all the players, all the big-time players, all the matchups. You're watching games on a Wednesday night. It's just something that you're really locked into. Football especially. Maybe because football is only 16 games and there's only so many competitions to go around. It's not every day. We have Thursday, we have Sunday, we have Monday, and then when you start to get after Thanksgiving, you start adding Saturday to the mix a bit. So there's sort of a scarcity in football. So maybe people watch it for that. There's only 16 of these games. Every one matters to such a huge degree. But baseball just leaves you in a place where you're just not, I don't know. It's weird. And I feel like I did at one time years ago care about what was happening around the league. I don't know if it was the Bonds thing, the McGuire thing, the home run chases, all that. But, I mean, we're watching Mike Trout. I mean, he plays in Anaheim. We were watching Ohtani before he was out. I don't know if he's come back or not. But you're not dying to watch it night after night because maybe because there's so many games. And you sort of just are like, well, I'll just wait till they come around and play my team. But then when your team is out, I'm not watching my team. I made such a big deal about cord cutting and getting YouTube TV, and I finally did get rid of my cable because I was like, oh, I can at least watch the Mets. And I'm not watching them. I don't watch any of it. I'm DVRing every game because you can. It's unlimited. We DVR the Yankees. We watch some of the Yankees. I want to be into watching the Yankees a little bit because they're as good as it gets. They're plus 50 wins in June. Unreal. I might be at 50. But I try to watch them. And my wife is a fan. My wife's mother, my mother-in-law, is a fan. But it's hard for me to sit and watch the Yankees. Like, I just don't feel an interest in watching it. I talk about wanting to watch it, but then when I sit down and put a game on, I'm thinking, man, I could be watching Atlanta. I could be watching, not the Atlanta Braves, I mean the show Atlanta. I could be watching all these shows that are backlogged. And it's funny, my mother-in-law always gives me a hard time about, are you watching the Mets? She'll ask me that because she's waiting for me to say, no, hell no, I'm not watching the Mets. They're not worth my time. And she says, well, I always watch my Yankees, no matter if they're good or bad. I keep score every night. I do all this. And I said, good for you. I have a lot of other things I need to be doing. And to me, the Mets are just another entertainment option. They're my team. And if they were providing me the reason to watch every day, I would watch every day. Does that make me a fair weather fan? Maybe. But, I'm a fair weather person. I'm going towards a thing that is going to fill my entertainment time with the most joy, with the most thought-provoking media, with the most things that are going to leave me better off at the end of the night somehow. And the Mets don't do that. With the Mets, I could check in. I could watch even with the DVR if I wanted to, but most of the time you check the score and they're out of it, or they've scored 1 or 2 runs. It's not exciting. There's no dynamic aspects to this team. And so I sit there and it's especially stark now because about a week ago, I said to myself, look, I got to catalog all the media that I have in my head at any one time that I want to watch. And so I took about 30 minutes, and in my listing app, I use Wunderlist. I like it. It's been apparently bought by Microsoft, and it was supposed to be phased out, but like a lot of tech, it's still there. And why are they going to phase it out when it's not doing any harm to anybody? I like it. It's just a list app. I mean, how much can they really do when they say, oh, we're not going to keep updating this thing? And you're like, well, what updates are you what updates are you not making now to a list app? It just keeps a list of apps and allows you to, not apps, it gives you a list of items. You can create lists and you can have countless numbers of items in each list, and then it has a checkbox where you can knock off. It has scheduling things. It has notifications. I mean, what else am I seeing? You could easily use your Apple or your Android lists if you want. I like this one. I don't know. I like that I can use a browser to get to it. But I sat down and I said, look, I got to fully account for all the TV shows that I've wanted to watch over the last handful of years that I haven't gotten to. And I watch a lot of TV, but with the amount of scripted television that's out there. There was nearly 500 shows greenlit last year that actually went on the air somewhere, streaming, broadcast, cable, 500 or so. It's hard to keep up. And probably 20% of them are really good. I mean, it could be more, but like, that's a big number. It's like 100 shows, right? That would be 20%, would be 100 shows that are good. I can't keep up. And each of these shows has 10, 12, 13 episodes. And then if you go to the broadcast, you're looking at 24. I mean, it's hard. I mean, it's a job to just keep up with this media. But I wrote down all the shows. And this has gotten me to the point when I kind of retort back to my mother-in-law. Look, I got shows I got to watch. And if the Mets were a TV season, they would have been canceled already. But because they're a pro sports team and they have a schedule, they have to keep going, no matter how bad it gets, no matter how bad the ratings get. They got to keep going. They got to fill airtime, and they have to fill a schedule for at least other teams who want to compete. But I wrote down all of the TV shows I want to watch, and I wrote down all of the books that I have purchased digitally that I have not read. So I bought books over the years that I wanted to buy in the moment that I bought at full price, which when you're on Kindle is like, $12 maybe. I think it was $9.99 at one point. Sometimes it could get up to $15. Wasn't there a big Apple? There's a thing where there was some like price monopoly stuff going on. There was like I forget which one it was, but after that was found in the courts to be illegal, whatever they were doing, all the books that were $9.99 seemingly went up to like $15. But I like to subscribe to this site called bookbub.com. And it's not subscribe. You just really subscribe to get emails. You're not paying for anything. It's just an opt-in. And it sends you each day all the books that are on sale that day that are $1, $2. And so I never buy books at full price because, as I've come to find out, my list is so huge of books I haven't read that I own that I'm just not going to go out there and buy the book I want to buy in the moment. I did buy that Fire and Fury book by Michael Wolff with the Trump thing. Everybody bought that. That book was tremendous. It was one of the few times where I buy a book and I finish it in like the next 2 weeks. That was a really good book. But I read so many magazines. I read so much in terms of current events. I subscribe to the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Atlantic, the Economist, the New Yorker. I did subscribe to Harper's at one time. I have Sports Illustrated. And you reach a point where you just can't read enough. Even if I were reading all day long every moment, I would have a hard time finishing those. So I pretty much have gotten to the point where I just read the New Yorker each week. I read that from when it comes out on Monday digitally until Thursday. And then the Economist kicks in Thursday afternoon. I consume that for the rest of the weekend till about Monday. And then the cycle starts again. That's about as much time as I have to read. And I'm not going to feel bad about that. A New Yorker is like 100 pages. An Economist is so many. An Economist can be a 7 to 9 hour commitment to consume and finish, whether you're listening to it as I often do or reading it. It gets hard. So I can't feel bad about not being able to read all this stuff. So what I do is I think I've sort of decided I'm going to keep my New Yorker subscription, keep my Economist subscription, and then I'm going to freelance around. I'm going to use things like Nuzzle, a great app that lets you know what the best stories at any time are. I'm going to use Pocket, where I save a lot of articles to read later. And Pocket has a really good recommendation engine where I think it's daily they'll send you the best articles. And maybe there's 10 articles, and I will save usually 2 of those. So I just keep kind of amassing in my queue. I just read a really good Donald Trump Jr. profile. I think it was in New York. It's hard to tell though when you save them to Pocket. You don't even, and first of all, it's coming from Pocket email and you're saving it to Pocket. You don't even know who the outlet is anymore. But that's what I try to do. But that's even just saying that. That's current events. I got to then get to books. When do I read books? So I'm always trying to fight. When am I going to read this? And so I'm always trying to jam it in, just like I'm trying to jam TV into the Mets. And the Mets being bad helps do that because I know where to put my attention. I'm going to put it towards the good television shows and I'll check in on the Mets. Whereas if you focus on consuming on the Mets, you'll never get to the television shows, even though you could probably do both at the same time. But then again, I'm married and I'm a father. I got all this. I mean, it's hard. But anyway, so I've tried to I try to read books. I try to make these sort of these routines in my mind. I say, well, for the morning, I'll read my current events and I'll listen to them on the way into my commute. So the New Yorker, you can get the audio version through the New Yorker Today app. So you can get the audio narrations of the articles, which is good because usually I can finish one of those in one ride. Although the weird thing with that app, you can't pick up your phone and do other stuff while it's doing it, because then it'll interrupt somehow. At some point it interrupts the stream of the audio and then you lose it. So basically I have to start it and then put my phone down and not look at my phone, which you shouldn't do. You shouldn't be looking at your phone when you're driving anyway, but I just use my watch to like double check on notifications and mail. So I'll listen to that. And then I'm like, well, on the workout days, then I will read my books while I'm working out. So if I do cardio, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, I get a lot of reading done. So on my cardio time, I'll read. And then as the last option, I will read, at least I tell myself, when we go up at night to go to bed, 10, 10:15, 10:20, at that point I'll read my book. Now I never get to that. I get up there, I open the iPad, and I just start looking at articles. I start looking at Facebook. You're a little tired, so you don't really have the motivation to go crazy into reading. And so 20 minutes into that, it's almost, 10 to 11. And I'm like, all right, time to read. And then every night I fall asleep with the iPad in bed, and I read maybe half of a page. I didn't put my sleep machine on, so my wife's yelling at me, and it doesn't work out. So you really have to stay very committed to what your plan of action is going to be with content. It's hard though, because again, I look at my list here. I got 40 shows of television to watch. Now, one thing I've done with TV is I've started streaming when I'm at work and I'm doing my work on the computer. I'll put my iPad out and I'll put my AirPods in, and then I will watch TV. So I'll watch, recently I finished Master of None, season 2. That was very good, by the way. Master of None is a very well done TV show. I know Aziz Ansari had his issues for a moment there with some of the Me Too stuff. I'm not sure what the end result of that did end up being, whether the woman who accused him came out and said that it was consensual. I don't know. But I think the show is very good. And it's funny because in season 2, Bobby Cannavale is in it, and he sort of plays a great chef, Anthony Bourdain type. Rest in peace, Anthony Bourdain. And he's just a mover and a shaker. He's a talker. He's passionate. He's all this. It's a tremendous character in the show. And then it turns out that that he was almost a Me Too type character, and it took down the partnership that Aziz Ansari and him had forged in the show. But the show is very good. There was one episode where they do really innovative things with TV as well. Aziz does. It's very smart. Like there's one episode where. And they're only like 30-minute episodes, but it goes from in New York City, that's where they're based. It goes from one group to the next, to the next, to the next. And they're all groups of people who have nothing to do with the show. So like the first scene will be Aziz talking to his friend walking, and then all of a sudden it passes off to a doorman in a random building. And then you come to learn about the 4 doormen in that building. And it's almost like a show about them for 5 to 8 minutes. And then it passes off to like Haitian Uber drivers or cab drivers. And then it goes back to their apartment, and it's like a show about them for 5 to 8 minutes. It's really innovative. And it was so cool to see where it would keep going. And ultimately, you felt you felt fulfilled by it. It was a very good show. So I did that. I also watched, this last week and a half, I've nearly come to the end, finished Atlanta season 2. That is a very good show. It's a really good show. I feel like how much cultural significance is placed on the show doesn't quite hit home to me, though. I think it's a tremendous show, but if everybody weren't telling me how great it was and how much it means to our society and how important a show it is, how it's the best thing on TV, I don't know if I would feel that way. I would still watch it, but if it were just a Netflix show that were buried in Netflix, sort of like Master of None, would Atlanta just be like Master of None if it were on Netflix? And would Master of None be more important if it were on FX? I mean, is it Donald Glover and his sort of multifaceted kind of jack of all trades? I'm a rapper, I'm a producer, I'm a television producer, I'm an actor in movies. He was in the Han Solo movie. I mean, is it sort of his moment, or like, would it be like Master of None if it was on Netflix and Master of None were on FX? It's hard to tell, because when I watch either show, I feel that they're both very good. But Atlanta, and maybe because I follow The Ringer, and The Ringer is crazy into Atlanta. It is a really good show. But when I'm watching it, I'm like, is it losing how good it is because everybody's telling me how good it is, and I want it to be, and I need it to be more than what I'm seeing, when things can't be more than they are. Without critical appeal and acclaim, would I be watching it the same way? And would I be asking as much from it? Or would it be like Master of None, as I said, where I watch Master of None and I'm not asking for it to change my world, to change my life like critics are saying. And it does a really good job. They both do. But anyway, I got all of these shows, all of them. I mean, just listen to this list. I'm not going to talk about them all, but just listen to this. Fear the Walking Dead, Pose, Succession, Orphan Black, Fargo, Catastrophe, American Crime Story, the new one, the Gianni Versace, The Looming Tower, Barry, BoJack Horseman, Narcos. I watched the first 2 seasons. I'm talking about just the third. So this is not just shows that I have not watched. It's also shows that I might not be up to date. The Crown, I'm not up to date. Ozark, I've not watched. Altered Carbon, I've not watched. 7 Seconds, I've not watched. Glow, I've not watched. Lost in Space, I've not watched. Bloodline, I've not watched. The Defenders, I have not watched. Jessica Jones, I'm a season behind. The Iron Fist, I've not watched. The American Horror Stories, I haven't watched any except the first season. Should I? I don't know. The Walking Dead, I have to finish. I am in the most recent season, but that show feels like it's kind of going off the rails. I'm not dying to watch that show every day. And then I'm finding out that Andrew Lincoln's going to potentially be gone next season. Rick Grimes, man. I mean, I don't know. I love the character. Who's the guy? Who's the bad guy again? Rick versus Negan. I love Negan. I love the character, but do I love Negan because he can play against Rick? Do I love Negan because he's the anti-force in a world where they're trying to create positive force? I really like it, but can a show live on Negan? And maybe I got to finish the season to even find out if that's still in play. But that show has fallen off in my mind a bit. Wild Wild Country. Wild Wild Country is a big one people say to watch. Killing Eve on BBC America is one to watch. Mr. Robot, we watched the season. We got to finish season 2. Homeland, we're a season behind. That Vietnam War documentary on PBS, I watched like the first 10 minutes, and now it's not available anywhere unless you buy it, so I want to wait until it becomes available somewhere, even though I should be subsidizing the arts in public broadcasting. Horace and Pete, I got like 3 episodes left. But boy, Louis C.K. has just fallen off the earth ever since his Me Too thing. But Horace and Pete was a nice show. The Spielberg documentary, Westworld, I've like watched maybe 2 episodes, and I know it's done with 2 seasons. Billions, I think we are more the majority of 2 seasons behind. Atlanta, I'm just about done. All or Nothing. My wife and I are in Dallas Cowboys All or Nothing. That's a good show. She likes watching that. I also noticed they got all these All or Nothing shows going on. So they have the one recently with Jim Harbaugh and University of Michigan. And then I saw there was one with like the All Blacks rugby team in New Zealand or something. That's crazy. That's weird, but it makes sense if you're an international platform and you want to get, why just follow American football? Why not follow one of these others? I don't know if I want to watch that or not. It could be kind of neat to see what that whole sports world is about. The Handmaid's Tale, I did watch season 2, episode 1, but I got to get through that. Big Little Lies, my wife and I are about 4 episodes into. I think there's only 9. The Good Fight, I've read about, is a good show. So that is the spin-off of The Good Wife, obviously not featuring Juliana Margulies, but it has several of the characters from The Good Wife, only available, though, on CBS All Access, which is a $6 a month with commercials or $11 a month without commercials service that you have to get on top of your CBS. The Americans, I'm way behind. That was a good show, though, and you could get it all on Amazon, basically, except the most recent season, but by the time I'd get there, it would be on Amazon, I'm sure, anyway. The Fourth Estate, which is the documentary about the New York Times in the age of Trump. That is good. Watched a little bit of that. And I'll tell you what, the part I watched of that so far that was cool, it was the beginning of the podcast called The Daily, the New York Times The Daily podcast, which has become a mega hit, I don't know, in its niche world, but it's taken on cultural significance to a degree, and it's very well done. It's really boosted the career of this Michael Barbaro. He was just like sort of a low-level reporter, and then he took on this podcast, and he's become like his star in his own right. He does a very good job. But it was cool to watch this in maybe the first episode of The Daily, which they were showing in this documentary. And it was Michael Barbaro in New York on his gear. And then it was Maggie Haberman, and was it Carl Hulse? I forget which one it was. Another major reporter down there in Washington covering the Trump era. And because of, I don't know if it was technical difficulties or if it was technical early days, they had to get Michael Barbaro's feed, they had to take an iPhone, and they had Michael Barbaro talking to the iPhone, but then also recording on his end. And then they had Maggie and this other gentleman recording in the Washington end, and they were both getting high quality audio because they were speaking into microphones. But in order to converse with the two of each other, they had to just use a straight iPhone talking to each other. But because there were two people on the Washington end, Maggie had to have one earbud, and then the other guy had to have one. So it was pretty hilarious how those things can turn out. Anybody who's come up in podcasting and done it understands that world, but it was fun to see it from the New York Times, this major outlet. And it was cool to hear the editorial meetings, and then Dean Baquet, who's the, I think, editor-in-chief of the New York Times. I mean, I know he's in charge, but I think that's the title. And he's talking about, we had these great headline numbers, and we had these 2 million podcast numbers. It was cool to hear podcasting get added into the mix. So The Fourth Estate is really good. I want to see that McCain documentary on HBO as well. And then Better Call Saul. We watched one season, got a lot more of that to do. So there is so much here. And then I was like, you know what I got to do? So the other thing I did too, by the way, I saw the Avengers in the theater because it was just, I got my movie pass app I have where I can go to Movies Unlimited with some restrictions, but I never get to see them. And once Oscar season's done, there's just not a lot of great movies out. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go see the Avengers. And I saw it. It made sense to me. I know people are like, well, you need to know the backstory and you need to know the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe leading up to it. I didn't feel like I had to. I feel like maybe the movie was made well in that you didn't have to have that. I was able to pick up things pretty well. Maybe not a lot of nods to old movies, but I thought to myself, well, you know what I got to do? Now I got to watch all the Marvel movies. If I watch the Avengers, maybe I should watch the others. Make that something that I can commit to doing. But that's 17 right now. And the other reason I did it is because on my YouTube TV, all of the movies that were getting into the mix that you could save were Marvel movies because of the Avengers being out, and everyone wants to kind of boost up while that's in the public sphere, while everyone's paying attention to that, try to get people to watch all the others. So I got Captain America, the First Avenger, Iron Man, which I remember seeing, but it was here, so I watched it again. That was a well-done movie on its own right. The Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, Iron Man 3, Thor the Dark World, Captain America, the Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Avengers, Age of Ultron, Ant-Man. I thought Ant-Man was a joke, but apparently it's pretty good. Spider-Man Homecoming, Captain America Civil War, Doctor Strange, Thor Ragnarok. Sounds like Fraggle Rock. And then Ant-Man and the Wasp is coming out. It's like, I did see the Avengers, though, the original Avengers. That was pretty good. And then I got all these books to read. I'm out of my mind. And I think I've caused high levels of anxiety and stress just because of the amount of things I have not consumed. And ignorance is bliss to the whole world of this. I didn't know there were 40 shows I was behind on or didn't watch that I want to watch. I didn't know there were 74 books I was behind on over the years as I commit each day to my current events and I let books fall to the wayside. This is why you got to commit to books. And then you sit there and go, do I really need to? Do I need to commit to the 40 TV shows, to the 75 books? With the books, at least I bought them. Although you could say with the TV shows, I've technically bought them as well, just on a subscription basis. Why do they not deserve to be watched any more than current events deserve to be read? I don't know. But man, I got so many 75. I don't even want to read the 75 books. And each time I look at the list, I'm like, oh my God, how did I buy that book through the BookBub for $2? Like, I got a lot of good books here. A lot of books I got to read. A lot of books that were the zeitgeist of 3 years ago, of 4 years ago, of 2 years ago. And then you're sitting there going, do I really need to read it now if no one's paying attention to it? Do I really need to read Hillbilly Elegy? Do I really need to read The Origins of Totalitarianism? Do I really need to read that great novel of the past? I don't know. But I got a million books and I have to find a way to read them. If anybody has any recommendations on how to break down the clutter and get through the content, little tricks, spend this much time on this, spend this much time on this. The thing that I have to do is, how do I pull back on current events without feeling like I'm not up to date as I need to be in this Trump era? I don't know. It's very tough to say. But speaking of MoviePass, AMC announced this week that they are launching their own subscription service, and it might be really, really good. You remember when Meerkat? Remember that app came out, and it was the sort of first pass at what became Periscope. So Meerkat came out, and everybody was doing their mobile video recording or mobile video streaming, and then all of a sudden Twitter's like, "Oh, here's Periscope. Meerkat's dead." I think AMC's trying to do that to MoviePass. So AMC launched this thing. Now, the thing I have to say is, does AMC launch a product like this if MoviePass doesn't exist? Now, that's no solace for MoviePass if they go under because of this. But this is why you need competitors, and this is why you need people kind of toeing the edges of where services should go. Because if you don't have someone doing it, it doesn't create the need for the conglomerate to do it. So AMC has come out with this thing. It's going to be a $20, $19.95 a month to see 3 movies a week. That's very good. It's going to be called AMC Stubs AMC Stubs A-List. The subscription will function as an extension of AMC's existing loyalty program, and it will roll out starting June 26th. The online and smart-based subscription will allow members to watch multiple movies a day and let you see movies more than once. That's a big key, because you can only see a movie once right now. It's basically blacked out in your app if you're in MoviePass once you've seen it. There will be no online ticketing fees, and it will offer a discount on food and drinks at the concession stand. Stubs A-List will be redeemable towards formats like IMAX and 3D, and will also include special AMC locations such as dine-ins. That's a huge thing because you can't see those with MoviePass. Now, MoviePass I'm only paying like $8 a month for, so there's a lot to be said to that too. AMC also boasts that the service will allow you to make up to 3 reservations at once in advance without having to physically be at the theater, unlike MoviePass's one-at-a-time location-dependent ticketing model. So this is good, getting some competition in the mix. A lot of people signed up to MoviePass, and maybe MoviePass can still survive. Maybe AMC can survive with this, but MoviePass needed to come about for this to happen. AMC would never just do this on their own. Let's finish here. So a few things with my wife, not about my wife, but that related to my wife. So I've talked to you about the rodent issues, the flying squirrels I've had in my attic. We feel like we are under attack a little bit. Now, we got the flying squirrels figured out, and I'm not alone. My neighbors down the street, they just had the pest control come out. They had 6 entry points to their attic where flying squirrels could come in. 6 entry points and a hornet's nest. So we're not alone here. We're not doing anything wrong. Sometimes things get you. Sometimes things find their way. We have a neighbor across the street who took down about 36 trees. And I was like, wow, well, there's where all our flying squirrels are coming from. I'm not blaming them. I'm really not. And I made the Curb Your Enthusiasm Larry David mistake of bringing it up to the guy. Like, my wife was destroying me afterwards when I told her that I did this. When I said, oh, hey, I heard maybe that could have led to it. And she's like, why would you ever say that? They're never going to talk to us again. And I said, I don't know. I'm not even that kind of person who kvetches, who focuses on things to that degree where it drives me nuts. I'm pretty free and easy, but for some reason I brought this up to the guy because I think I was convinced in my mind this did it. And I don't even know what I wanted to come from it. But put the trees back? I don't know. But it sounds like that could have been the thing that happened. So we got that figured out. And then a couple weeks ago, I'm sleeping peacefully in my bedroom. 5 a.m., 5:30 a.m. And during the week, my wife will get up early to work out down in the basement here. We have a nice gym in our basement, weights, treadmill, elliptical, Peloton bike, pull-down machine, barbells, power blocks. It's a nice gym, a lot more than enough you could do here. And so she will get up early in the morning and do her workout before our son gets up, before she goes to work. And so she usually does that very quietly. I sleep very deeply, so I don't even hear her go down. But one morning, I'm sitting there or sleeping there in bed, and I hear my phone ringing. And when you're just completely out of sorts and nothing makes sense, and you don't even know what's what, and you're woken from a deep sleep, my phone's ringing. And it's like 5:30. And I see text messages. I see my wife, and it's her calling. And she says, we have a major problem. And so that's how I'm waking up at 5:30 when I'm someone who needs to sleep basically now till 6:30 to get my full allotment of sleep. I got a long commute. I sort of set this up so I can sleep till then by going to bed a little later even. So now I'm awoken. I'm awoken from a deep sleep, and I'm awoken an hour before I should be getting up with my wife saying, we have a big problem. I can't even compute what's happening in my head. And she goes, you better get down here. We have a chipmunk. And I went, oh my God, what the hell does that mean? We have a chipmunk? So I come down, and now I'm thinking, well, here's the thing with a house. So you have a somewhat newer house. This is about this house will be 25 years old in a year. I'd say I think it was built in 94 or 93. It might be 25 years old. So fairly new, and it's a fairly new feeling house. There's been some work done to it, I believe, to make it a little more modern feeling even. But when you see the house, it feels like a modern house. Not brand new, but pretty new feeling in a new subdevelopment type of thing. So we've had some action in the attic, but the inside of the home, the floors below the attic and the basement, the finished basement, you think are off limits. And so you always in your mind get yourself through things by saying, well, our sanctuary is safe. Nothing's getting in. And so when that pierces your sense of comfort and safety with the situation, you now just feel like you're in an alien place. So my wife's saying this, I don't even know what this means, chipmunks. So I come downstairs, and she points to me where it is. And of course she's like, you got to fix it. And I'm like half asleep. I'm in my boxer shorts, and I'm like, I'm barely a man. Like, why do I have to fix it? I mean, I'm not trying to argue with her about it, but I'm like, why would I do this? I don't know this. What the hell, chipmunks? And so what had happened, she had video. She heard kind of scurrying around in our recessed basement ceiling. So we have those recessed ceilings, which is where a lot of the piping goes. So when you have a finished basement, you don't really want the piping to be seen. Whereas when you have just a normal unfinished basement, you don't care. Everything kind of looks steampunky and open and not as elegant, because that's not, it's not the point. It's just a basic basement. This is a finished basement. So what comes with a finished basement is you do these recessed ceilings where you can see at certain points the height of the ceiling, and then the ceiling comes down in nice looks like it's just coming down about 2 feet, 1.5 feet. And that's where all the piping is, under this nice ceiling. And so she heard scurrying around up there. And then she looked in the corner when she heard the scurrying stop underneath a window well. The windows are about maybe 8 feet above our heads, where the window wells are that go to outside. And she saw this chipmunk drop down from the ceiling into this window well like a burglar, almost like hanging on with 2 arms, and then drops, comes out into the window well, looks into the room, sees her. She takes a picture. I have the picture. It sees her and then turns around and jumps back up into the hole that had been created. So it burrowed a hole into our goddamn ceiling. So it jumped up into this hole, climbed back up like a burglar, and scurried out. Now, we don't know what this means. It's at this point 5:45 a.m. I am frickin' freaked out, and I know I don't have any idea what to do. I'm afraid that now our house is completely penetrated, that there are chipmunks everywhere, that we have no way out, that this is going to be like a $20,000 thing to fix. You think all the worst, and you think this is where everything hits about being a homeowner and what a joke it is, and sort of what a chump you are for being a homeowner. That the joke's on you when you own a home, even though home ownership is supposed to be the greatest sign of an American other than voting for Trump. And so we now have this. I don't even know where to look. I'm exhausted from getting up. I'm exhausted from going through this flying squirrel thing. I'm exhausted about calling the pest control company. I just don't want to do it anymore. It's just like you got other things to do. The bandwidth is just worn down. And you're like, here's another fight we're going to have to fight. I mean, this is out of control. And so you're looking up stuff, and it's like, well, chipmunks are impossible to get in traps. And you're reading all these different things about what it means. And nobody has a straight answer. So anyway, we call the pest control company again. They're basically on speed dial, although we don't have speed dial because we got rid of our telephone as well as cable. And they're like, well, we can send someone out, but there's really nothing you can do for chipmunks. What do you mean there's nothing you can do for chipmunks? What? Excuse me? What does that mean? And they're like, well, they're non-target rodents, so they're not. It's like, wait a second. There are delineations about rodents. Give me a break. And so they're like, well, they're hard to catch because they're really strong and they're fast and all this. And it's like, well, what do you do? And they're like, well, we can send someone out and see if there's a hole. And I'm like, for Christ's sake, this is out of control. How are they getting into our recessed ceilings? I mean, now we don't hear them anymore for some time now, because you come to find out, at least this is from what the pest control company says, you come to find out that chipmunks don't actually like to be in homes. They are outside animals. So if they found a way in, it was really just maybe to store some stuff, but to get out. They don't want to live in the house. Now I'm thinking, why not? I mean, if they can kind of nest something up to feel like outside, I'd want to be in a house. But I realized all this time as I've been doing podcasts in the basement, I would hear this sort of flurry of activity. There's even episodes, if you listen in the back, where I'm like, what was that? There's something running around in the walls. And so as far back as probably 6 months ago, I was hearing some activity. And there was even one point where I went upstairs after the podcast and I looked in the general vicinity of where I heard the noise, and I feel like I saw something dart in and out of this little hole. And so I think that was it. There's a little hole on the side of our front door area where somehow they were able to get in and kind of have access to a run of the recessed ceiling and get around. And I'm guessing that one of them must have gotten stuck, not known how to get back out, and burrowed a hole, which they could do in less than 5 minutes apparently, into that area to try to get out, because maybe it saw the light by the window and it did that. And I mean, as things stand, I think we're okay now, because we had someone come out and I showed the guy, he was looking around the house trying to find holes and all this stuff. And this is what drives me nuts sometimes about pest control. I come upon the guy because I was at a coffee shop locally until they got there, because I didn't want to interfere with the nanny and Liam. And then he's distracted by me being there. So I just go to a coffee house and I told my nanny, call me, I'll come right up. And she's like, this guy's moving fast, you better get up here. It's almost like they want to move fast through things so they can get out without finding stuff. Because if you find stuff, now it's a big job. So I'd rather almost just extend and pretend, as they say in the banking industry. And so I get here, I see the guy around the back of the house and I'm like, oh, hey, what's going on? And he's like, I'm not really seeing stuff. I'm like, hold on. So we went to the front of the house. I go, what about this? He goes, oh yeah, that could be a hole. And it's like, you just did a circle? You didn't see that? Like, it was a nice guy, but I'm like, what's going on here? Now, granted, we have a big house. So sometimes when you have something so big to look at, and I'm not trying to say that braggingly, but when you have something that's larger to look at, it can sometimes make you not see the obvious thing, because you're so focused on the magnitude of what you're looking at, that something that's even big is just lost because it's just a small piece of the whole. That's at least what I'm saying. But then this guy goes on to say, oh yeah, that could be it. So he stuffs it up a little bit. And I had even seen, because I had someone come through from the Flying Squirrel Time who was looking around the house. And I said, what about this? And he had plugged up the hole. And since then, the meshing had actually been messed with. So I think that the chipmunks were going in there and they were still able to kind of maneuver their way around what meshing was there. So ever since this second guy came, and this guy said he's been working at pest control 10 years. This is the second time he's ever heard of a chipmunk in his time, in his projects, in whatever they were doing at the pest control. He's ever heard of one going into a house in this kind of way. You know, they could get in through an open door, they could get in through a window or whatever, but to actually go in through a house like a mouse, he was like, this is only the second time. So ever since he meshed that up, he did a really good job, made it very taut, made it very impossible to get through. We haven't had anything. Now, of course, I'm freaked out because I'm like, do I smell something? Did something die in the ceiling? And now you're never getting to that. But I don't know. I just tend to think the worst now. And all you can do is let things get behind you, and then life just go on, and you not have these things happen, and then it gets better. But in the period of time where you're still so close to the events, you're just so focused on them in your house. It's just crazy. The other thing, so my wife just had her birthday in early June, and getting gifts are so hard. I mean, anybody knows this. Like, there are the stock gifts I can get my wife, which she told me 10 years ago, the things she likes, and I've kept that note ever since. It's a certain kind of jewelry, and I will get that religiously. But there is a point where you're like, do I really need to get the same thing again? Do I really need to get basically the same thing? And then sometimes you're like, wait, you forget what you actually got, and you might be getting the same gift twice. It's just kind of, it's a silly situation. So I like to try to get her things that are actually meaningful. A couple of years ago, my mom got her, I think around Christmas, an Apple Watch, and she has come to love it. I mean, she was not asking for an Apple Watch, but ever since she got it, she wears it every day. It's very much a part of her life, very useful. She gets a lot of, she really gets a lot out of it, from the notifications to the workouts to all that. So I thought to myself, let's get her a new watch. So, you're always waiting for the deals. And I ended up getting her the watch later because there was a Father's Day deal, $50 off at Best Buy for an Apple Watch 3, not with the LTE. But an Apple Watch 3 is 2 full versions ahead of the one she had, which was an original. It's going to be a major upgrade. But the first thing I got was, let's get you an upgraded phone. So me getting her a phone is really me being the tech to get it all set up for her. Because in a lot of these plans for phones now, you can get a phone without actually having to pay for it. You just pay for the tax. And now if you get the Apple iPhone 10, spelled with an X, for the 10th anniversary of the original iPhone, if you get that, the tax on that is like $100. So it's actually quite a bit of money, that 7% tax that you have to pay on that. So I tend to pay with the tax. Now, I accidentally, when I went to buy it, she ended up buying the tax because her card was on file. She is the primary owner of our cell phone account, because as a teacher, she gets a 15% discount on all things that have to do with the phone. So she ends up being the owner. But I couldn't get to the point where I could pay with my credit card. So I'm like, I'm sorry. I ended up buying your phone with your money. So I have to get that back to her. But anyway, I got the phone and it got sent to us. And then you pretty much have the 10-day window to get the new phone set up and then to get the old one back without being docked the money for the old one. And I'll tell you what, this is where Apple is just falling down on things. Setting up a new iPhone based off of an old one is almost getting impossible. I am somebody who is a self-professed expert on Apple goods, and it took me the better part of 2 evenings to get my wife's phone up to probably 80% of what her past one was. It's crazy, because you have a phone and then think about how many videos and photos you've taken, and you don't want to lose them. And then all the data you have stored up. You want to start the new phone up and pretty much not feel like you're losing anything from the old phone. Like you're stepping right into your new phone, but it's your old phone, and all you're reaping are the major benefits of the new hardware and software. So I go to do her phone. And the first thing I do this every time I go to change a phone, and it never works. It'll say you can back your phone up to iCloud, right? So most of us just have the 5 gig the iCloud account, the free one you get. And so I'm looking at my wife's phone, and there's like 80 gigs on it, right? So there's 80 gigs of storage in order to get everything from that phone into the new phone. So you would need that capacity to back it up, that capacity of gigs. So I always say to myself, and I got to remember that it never works because I always fall for this. I say, well, if I get the 200 gig plan, or is it megs? I don't know. I think it's megabytes or gigabyte. No, GB, right? So I get the plan for 200, which means I should have more than enough when I back up that old phone to that cloud to then start with the new phone, log into that iCloud, and bring it all down. It never works. I go to do it, and then I always say to myself, I'll pay the $3 a month and then immediately cancel it for the next month. So you can get the benefit of that storage in the cloud, get it onto the new phone, and then drop it. It never works. When I'm backing it up, even I'm expecting I'll have to back it up overnight. It's a lot of data. You wake up and it's still backing up. And then you restart it and it's still backing up when you get home that night. It never works. It's absolutely horrendous. And I don't understand how to get it to work. It just never works. And it should at 200, at 200 megs, it should absolutely work. And so I always fall for that as the first one. It takes me forever to back up a phone. And the problem is, once you set the new phone up to respond on the phone number with the phone company, that is now the phone. So you can keep your old phone around as basically an iPod Touch, but the new phone is the one to call. And now if you can't bring over everybody with the contacts and all that, you end up just being in a bad position. So the minute you turn the new phone on with the phone number, you really quickly, like within hours, have to get the old phone to the new one. Otherwise, there's going to be a massive gap between what you're expecting. And so I then do the thing where you back up the phone to a hard drive, to a computer, to then set it up on the new phone. So I start doing that, and there's not enough space. And it doesn't tell you there's enough space until it's been backing up for 25 minutes. And then at the very end, when it's like 98%, it's like, sorry, there's not enough space on this device. So you're like, well, how much do I need? And then I was like, oh my God, do I need 70? And then I realized the computer I'm backing it up to only has 110. So you pretty much need the entire contents of the storage on that computer to back this phone up for 1 second. So I'm cutting things left and right. I'm getting rid of things on the computer to back up. Then I realized, well, with Google Photos, because about 39 gigs of the, it's gigabits. 39 of that is photos and videos. So I thought to myself, ooh, Google Photos will back up unlimited amounts of photos and videos. So I can bring everything up into Google Photos, delete all the photos from the device. Now I'm almost 40 gigs down. That's much better. So I do that. It takes overnight to get those photos in sync. Everything's good. Thank you, Google Photos. Google coming through with a cloud-based solution, at least. It worked. And then they even have an option when you're in the Google Photos app where once they're all updated, you can delete all the photos from the device right from that app. So that was useful. So I did that. Then I go, and I think I'm now at the next night. I then go to back up my wife's phone, which is 40 gigs lighter. And it's working fine. It's working great. Working awesome. It got backed up. I then plug in the new phone to restart it with that profile from that last phone. It's working fine. And then it gets to the point and it goes, what's the password for this encryption? I'm like, excuse me. So somehow the backup had been encrypted. And what you learn about encrypted backups is that there is no way to get a new password because then that would defeat the purpose of the encryption. The encryption is to be a fail-safe lock to never be accessed from anybody who doesn't have the original password. So now I'm at the point, I'm losing my mind. I mean, I'm 2 days now on a process that should be seamless. And I'm an expert, and I'm 2 days into this project now, and it's just awful. I can't imagine somebody who's not good at this, what they would do. And maybe I wasn't using some obvious tools or apps, or I don't know, but it was out of control. And now I'm dealing with this encryption. So then they say the only way to break it is to basically renounce certain backed up information, which could probably be 15% of information that has to do with that device. So everything's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be a perfect backup, but you pretty much reset that original phone and erase settings that have to do with encryption. To then now back that phone up again, that worked. And then I finally got that to back up to the new phone about with, 85% of the way on her old phone. And then you put the Google Photos app on the new phone, and now you're good with the photos. It was an unbelievable process, and I just flat out don't understand how it can get so unwieldy and out of control from somebody in my wife who has been an Apple iPhone user for many years now. It should just follow you. It should just work. Why doesn't the iCloud work in the moment? I don't understand. I mean, this is a major issue, but so many people get new phones, it must not be as much an issue as I think. What are people doing? But I was losing my mind. I was spending so much time doing this. And then you're up till like midnight. And then when it's like midnight and you're trying to back up again, you got to then wait 20 minutes for it to find out and boot you out and say that it didn't work because there wasn't space, because there was encryption, there was this. And then you're getting those like cold feelings in your body about like, and almost like you're an addict trying to get this taste to work for freaking software that you paid $1,000 for. I mean, you didn't pay for it, you just paid for the tax, but this expensive hardware, this completely tested and refined software, how is it this terrible to run a transfer? I don't even know. I don't get it. And I'm like losing my mind with how that even came to be. And you're sitting there going, boy, remember this about getting a new phone as a gift. I mean, even when I get my own phone, and my wife is sort of the photographer of the family. So she's got a lot of stuff she needs to back up. You don't want to lose your kids' pictures. That's the whole point of having these devices and this storage and all this. I don't know how Apple figures it out. They got to have a better situation. And then I remembered, because originally when I started with the phone, there was that thing where it's like, hold the phone near the other phone and then it'll transfer the iCloud login and information. I was like, oh my God, wait. I thought I read about this, that you could like wand one over the other and it'll automatically drop everything on the other phone. No, it was like the login to the iCloud or the iTunes, and that was about it. There was nothing else. And I was like, oh man, that would be a great thing. If you could put like the phones on top of each other overnight and then they just transfer everything from one to the other, that would be pretty cool. Well, why don't we call it there? It's a lot of stuff. Friends, thank you. I'm going to go and try to watch my first meaningful amount of the World Cup here. Germany, Sweden, right? I think that's the game. So we will pick it up later. We'll talk about something else. And you enjoy as we move from the first 6 months of the month or the year to the second 6 month. Wow, halfway. How crazy is that? I can't even comprehend it. I'll see you later, folks. Thanks.